The danger that seems ordinary. Coffee is everywhere, which is precisely why it is invisible. It sits on kitchen counters without warning labels. It is offered in meetings without hesitation. It is consumed before the body is even fully awake. No substance that alters human behavior this consistently should feel this normal. Yet coffee does. The danger of coffee is not what it does. It is how quietly it does it. Unlike drugs that force a reaction, coffee persuades the brain. It does not inject energy. It negotiates silence. Specifically, it silences fatigue. Fatigue is not weakness. Fatigue is a biological alarm designed to prevent collapse. Coffee does not remove the need for rest. It disables the reminder. And when a warning system is disabled daily, dependency is no longer accidental, it is engineered. Modern society did not invent coffee, but it perfected its use. Coffee aligned perfectly with a world that needed longer workdays without longer recovery. The cup became small. The expectation became enormous. Wake up, consume, delay exhaustion, repeat. This loop did not require coercion. It required normalization. The first price of vigilance. The earliest encounters with coffee were not pleasant. Historical records describe unease, rapid thoughts, and unnatural alertness. People stayed awake longer than their bodies demanded. At first, this was interpreted as a spiritual disturbance. If the body is tired, it should sleep. Coffee violated that rule. Religious leaders questioned whether prolonged wakefulness interfered with divine design. Medical authorities could not explain why alertness existed without nourishment. Coffee did not feed the body. It bypassed it. That contradiction made people uncomfortable. The discomfort was justified, because coffee introduced a new human state, wakefulness without recovery. This state is useful, but costly. The cost just wasn't immediate. Coffeehouses soon emerged, and with them, a new problem. People did not just stay awake. They stayed engaged. They talked longer. They argued more. They questioned authority. Fatigue normally ends conversations. Coffee removed that ending. Ideas that would normally dissolve at night persisted into early morning hours. This was not productivity. This was disruption, fear, doubt, and prohibitions. Coffee did not spread quietly. It was noticed, and when something changes human behavior at scale, power reacts. Coffee was banned multiple times across different regions and centuries. Not because it poisoned the body, but because it energized the mind. Authorities described coffeehouses as breeding grounds for dissent, places where ideas traveled faster than control mechanisms could follow. Coffee made people alert. Alert people observe. Observant people question. That sequence was dangerous, so coffee was framed as immoral, as unhealthy, as destabilizing. But bans failed, because once humans experienced extended wakefulness, they didn't want to return to limitation. What could not be stopped had to be absorbed. And absorption is where control begins. By the end of these early conflicts, coffee had proven something critical. Humans were willing to trade rest for stimulation, repeatedly. That willingness would shape the future. Coffee did not conquer humanity by force. It was welcomed. What started as a suspicious stimulant became a daily companion. And in the next phase, it would become something far more powerful, a structural necessity. Because once systems are built around extended endurance, those systems no longer function without it. Industrial harmony. When coffee entered the industrial age, its role changed permanently. Before factories, fatigue was a limit. After factories, fatigue became an obstacle. Industrial systems did not require creativity or reflection. They required endurance, long shifts, repetitive tasks, predictable output. The human body was never designed for this rhythm. Coffee did not solve that mismatch. It concealed it. Instead of redesigning labor around biology, biology was chemically negotiated into compliance. Workers could now override sleep. Not safely, but effectively. Effectiveness was enough. Coffee became the lubricant of industry. Not because it improved health, but because it reduced friction. A tired worker questions. A fatigued worker slows down. A rested worker leaves. A caffeinated worker stays. This was not accidental adoption. It was structural alignment. Coffee fit perfectly into a system that measured humans by output, not well-being. And once aligned, it could no longer be removed without consequences. The real transformation happened quietly. Coffee stopped being a choice. It became an expectation. Arriving tired was no longer acceptable. Being alert became a responsibility. Fatigue turned from a biological signal into a personal failure. And coffee was offered as the correction. Chemical cheating. To understand coffee's power, you have to understand what it does not do. Caffeine does not energize cells. It does not repair tissue. It does not restore the nervous system. What it does is more subtle and more dangerous. It blocks adenosine. Adenosine is the chemical messenger that tells your brain, you are tired. You need rest. Caffeine occupies adenosine receptors without activating them. The message never arrives. The brain does not recover. It simply delays acknowledgement. This creates a false state. The body is exhausted. The mind believes it is functional. That mismatch is the core illusion of coffee. And illusions are powerful when repeated daily. Over time, the brain adapts. It creates more adenosine receptors. The same cup stops working. Tolerance increases. Dosage increases. Dependence forms, not because coffee gives something, but because stopping reveals what was hidden. Withdrawal is not pain caused by absence. It is the return of suppressed signals. Headaches, irritability, mental fog, not because coffee was helping, but because the brain was being muted. This is not addiction in the dramatic sense. It is compliance through chemistry. And compliance scales extremely well. Construction of the ritual. Coffee's dominance is not maintained by chemistry alone. It is protected by ritual. Morning coffee, coffee breaks, meetings over coffee, conversations that start after coffee. The substance disappeared behind the ceremony. Ritual removes suspicion. People do not question rituals. They repeat them, and repetition normalizes dependence. Coffee became social currency. Refusing coffee is seen as odd. Questioning coffee is seen as unnecessary. The ritual creates belonging. The chemistry ensures continuation. Together, they form a closed loop. A loop that does not require enforcement. Only participation. Marketing completed the transformation. Coffee was no longer framed as stimulation. It became comfort, warmth, identity. Don't talk to me before coffee. This sentence reveals everything, not humor. Admission. By this point, coffee had achieved something rare. It embedded itself into identity. Not as a drug, not as a tool, but as normal, and anything normal becomes invisible. Coffee did not overpower human biology. It convinced humans to ignore it. The system did not force caffeine into daily life. It built daily life around caffeine. And once rituals, expectations, and productivity depend on suppression of fatigue, removing the substance feels impossible. But consequences do not disappear. They accumulate. In the final part, we confront the cost. Not to the system, but to the human nervous system itself. The silent price. Coffee's most significant cost is not immediate. It does not announce itself with dramatic symptoms. It accumulates quietly, invisibly, and patiently. Chronic sleep deprivation rarely feels catastrophic. It feels normal. This is the trap. When fatigue becomes constant, people stop recognizing it as a warning. They adapt their expectations downward. Memory softens. Reaction time slows. Emotional regulation weakens. But because the decline is gradual, it feels personal rather than systemic. Coffee masks the signal, not the damage. The nervous system never catches up. It only postpones. Medical studies repeatedly show the same pattern. Caffeine extends wakefulness. It fragments sleep quality. It delays deep recovery phases. People sleep longer but recover less. The brain remains partially alert even at rest. This is not rest. It is interruption. Over years, the cost appears as anxiety, burnout, and reduced resilience. Not because coffee is evil, but because suppression was mistaken for solution. The system benefits from this misunderstanding. A tired population does not revolt. It copes. It consumes solutions to survive problems it never chose. Coffee is sold as help. Burnout is sold as personal weakness. The loop remains intact. Normalization of burnout. Modern language reveals normalization. I'm exhausted is no longer alarming. It is conversational. I need coffee is no longer a choice. It is assumed. Fatigue used to end days. Now it defines them. Coffee did not create burnout. It allowed burnout to function. Without caffeine, many modern schedules collapse. That is not resilience. That is dependency at scale. The normalization extends to children and adolescents. Energy drinks, caffeinated sodas, early exposure, stimulation replaces rest before rest is even understood. The nervous system learns one lesson early: ignore signals. Override limits. This lesson does not disappear with age. It becomes habit. When exhaustion is shared, it feels cultural rather than structural. Everyone is tired. Therefore, no one questions why. Coffee keeps the question delayed. Inevitable cycle. Coffee does not force the cycle. It sustains it. Wake tired. Consume caffeine. Delay collapse. Crash later. Repeat. The delay creates the illusion of control. People believe they are managing energy. In reality, they are scheduling exhaustion. The system rewards endurance, not recovery. And coffee makes endurance possible. The final truth is uncomfortable. Coffee did not enslave humanity. Humanity optimized itself around suppression. Removing coffee does not fix the system. But understanding coffee reveals the system. Once you see the loop, you cannot unsee it. And awareness changes behavior, slowly, imperfectly, but irreversibly. Coffee is not your enemy. But it is not neutral. It is a tool, and every tool shapes the hand that uses it. The question is no longer whether coffee controls us. It is whether we recognize the control. Because what is invisible feels harmless. And what feels harmless is never questioned. Check out the channel, subscribe, and discover more.